The default properties inside of Obsidian are pretty good, but Metadata Menu makes editing those properties a little bit easier, in my opinion. They also add hotkeys to it, they add formula properties, object properties. You can also have a database table of all of the files in certain classes, which is editable, which makes editing multiple properties far easier because you can add them all to a file in one click. You can't bulk add files, but that's an Obsidian limitation. And then you can also add inline code block Dataview table query type things. It's easier to show you. Basically, it's an editable Dataview query if you're familiar with Dataview. If you're not, then it's like an inline table inside of Notion. In this video, I'm going to go through as much of the plugin as I can, bearing in mind that obviously updates will change things as we move forwards. So to start with, this is an Obsidian file. It's completely empty. If I go to the source mode and I add 3 dashed lines, this is what you'll be familiar with if you've used Obsidian for a while, and this is what's called front matter or YAML. You then add a key, so property is the key, and then you add a value. And this is a property inside of Obsidian in the source mode. Most people won't see it like this, but this is what it looks like. If I then come down and go to live preview, you can see this is the updated properties that Obsidian lets you have. We have the key, which is the name of the property, which you can customize and change. And then you have the value being the thing inside of the property. Going to the bottom left settings, going to the editor panel and going down to display, you can see you can show the properties in different ways. They can be visible all the time. They can be hidden, or they can be in that source mode that I've just shown you. So hidden is they've gone, so you can't see them inside of the file anymore. And if we click on source mode, there's that source mode that we go in, but you can see I'm actually in live preview. So the properties show in source, even though everything else in the page is in live preview. So if we add a link to itself and we push space, this is in live preview, but the properties are in the source mode. If I take everything to source mode, you can see now we can see the brackets there, and that's the difference. So I'm going to leave this to visible. If we then go to the core plugins, type in properties, you can add a properties view in the sidebar. So we have the left sidebar, we've got the left ribbon, the left sidebar with 3 of the core plugins. Go to the right sidebar. Now we've got the 4 core plugins, the outline, the tags, the outgoing and backlinks. But we also have, hidden over here, is the properties view. I'm going to drag it down so you can see now it's going to show all of the properties inside of this Obsidian Vault folder, the MDM Vault folder. The alias, CSS classes, and tags property are default properties inside of Obsidian. You can see I don't have anything, there's 0 there, but property, which is this property here, is what I named it, appears once. If I click it, then goes to search, looks for the property, it's in the welcome page property text. If we change the name of this to class, now you can see the property doesn't appear because the name is class. Inside the properties view, it's now looking for class, and you can sort all of the properties via property name, A to Z, or frequency, high to low. So often used properties, very similar to tags, and you can search in the filter. Going into the hotkeys and typing in properties, you can see there are 3 commands that we can use, which is show all properties, like in this property view, properties view for the file specifically. So I'm going to push plus to add a command on there, Control-Shift-P, and then the other main property hotkey lets you toggle them closed or open in a file. So we'll go Control-Shift-C for close. Now when I push Control-Shift-C, it closes the property and opens the property, or I could just click on the property title. When I push Control-Shift-P, now it's added another view to the side panel. It's showing me just the properties inside of this file. So maybe you want to hide the properties at the top. So going into the editor view, down to properties and document and say hidden. Now they're hidden, but you can see them on the far right. I'm going to show them again. The reason I'm showing you all of this is what Obsidian does automatically already without the plugin. We can add a single property to a file, but we then have to make it up. So what is this property? If we want to add priority, for example, now we've added priority to this file, go to the Files core plugin, create a new file, we need to add all of those properties in. So if I make this split screen, we've got class and priority. How do I add the property? If I go to the command palette with Control-P, property, add file property, there is a hotkey you can see that was added by default, and now I get the drop down list of all the properties, so class, and then I want to add priority. So I can add individual properties into the new file, but I need to click in, add individual priority, and then find the property inside of the list. If you've got lots of different properties and lots of files, it can be a little bit cumbersome. When it comes to the types of properties, if you click on the icon, property type, we have text, and that's what this icon means. It's the text property. We can click on list, and now it's going to be a different type. So if I type first, then enter, you can see now it's been added as a list item, which has an X next to it, so I can get rid of it. I can type second, enter, and again, that's now a list item. Because class is text, if I say first and then push enter, it just enters that as text inside of the field. Going to the source mode, you can see this is what's actually happening. This is text because there's the key and there's the value. This is a list, there's the key, there's the two different values. If we add another property, say it's done, and we go to the property type, we can say this is a checkbox. Going into the source mode, again, it's the same thing, but this at the moment doesn't have a value, which is why it's showing that line across the box. If we tick it, now it's true. So we go to the source mode, it's true. If we go back to the live preview, click it off, now it's false. So inside of source mode, it says false. For completeness, let's go to number, and now when I try and add text inside of here, it doesn't let me. Why it's let me put E? Because it's a math symbol, E, but if I type numbers, it's perfectly fine. And then we have two different properties. We've got date and then date time. I click on date. I then get the option to click on the date icon and select any date that I want. Let's just go back a few months. And this can be linked to Daily Notes if you use the Daily Notes plugin. If you don't, then obviously don't. And then if you want to add a time, you change the property type to date and time, and then it adds the time option on the end, which you can then change. Let's just do something simple, 456. Sorted. And inside source mode, this is what we're seeing. However, if I want all of these properties in this file as well, I would need to go and manually add them all in. So I'm just going to click them through, and it does give me a drop down of what was in there before. So first and second. However, it's always a multi-list. You can always add multiple items to the list, so you just need to be diligent by not adding more than one. If I open up the two brackets and then start linking files, I now have welcome linked to the untitled file inside of the list property. Let's just rename this to first so we know what we're doing. Always update. Add a new note, call it second. If I want to add the second file, I then come in, go bracket, second. It's there, it's doable, and it works. But I have to go through the linking search every time, and as the vault builds out, if I want to narrow down that search, I can't with the Obsidian default properties. And now I'm going to go to the plugin, community plugins. We've got Dataview and Metadata Menu both installed. Just taking note, this is version 0.6.8 beta of Metadata Menu because some of these features are being beta tested. And Metadata Menu needs Dataview to work. So when we go into the Dataview settings, the JavaScript queries of inline and normal need to be turned on inside of the Dataview settings. That's all you need to do with Dataview. But when we come into Metadata Menu settings, there are loads of options. For the moment, I'm just going to get started. So I'm going to open this up, and this says FileClass Settings, and this looks for file classes. And we want a class folder, and the alias at the moment is FileClass. You can change it to what you want. So I'm going to change this to class, save. The default icon on any class is package. You can change it, but I'm going to leave it as the default. The results per page are in the table view, which I'll go to later. I'm going to also turn this option on, which means it's going to add a file class when I create a new file. And when it adds a file class, I want it to show the file class drop-down select of all the classes inside of this folder we've just identified. So I'm going to create that folder, class. And now we have the plus icon, and the plus icon lets us add a new file class. So let's say we have a file class type of project. I'm going to close down these tabs, and we are now in the project file class settings. So if I was to come into the project file, it's a completely empty file right now. I click on the icon, it takes me to the settings. This is the table view I'll explore later, but you can see the results per page is 20 because that's what we have in the settings. The file class fields at the moment are empty, but when we go to the file class settings, you can change the records per class type. So the main setting says 20. If you want this to be more, say 40, then it will show 40 per page. So I'm going to save that, go to the table view. You could save it to 40, so save that. And now when I go into the file, you can see inside of the properties of the project file, Metadata Menu is automatically adding the setting information. So the limit is now 40, the icon is the clipboard list, and if we click on that icon, you can see now the table results is 40 rather than 20. Go back to the settings. You can map it with tag. So when we click on the first file, it's looking for the key class, because inside of the settings, we added the FileClass field alias as class. This is the key of the property that it's looking for, which we already have, and then it's given us a box, and that's a drop-down box of everything in that folder, which at the moment just says project. However, if I remove this property, now I don't get that drop-down, but what I can do is go hash, and then project. Now we've got a hashtag project inside of the first file. I can map with tag, save, and now when I look at the first file, the icon is at the top, and we also get this button down here next to the add properties by the default Obsidian Core plugins, because I can click it and then insert missing fields from the project class. Just as a note, if we have a look at that properties view, you can see there are loads of properties in here now, which is where, as your vault builds out, this can get very, very busy, which is why I personally don't show this. Now, I am going to manually add a tags property just to show you that there's the project tag that we made. It's in there. If we were to add the tag inside of the property rather than inside the file, you can see it still keeps that icon. So if we come back, because it's still mapped with the tag, it's any tag, I can click on the icon and there is the field list. Now, fields inside of Metadata Menu are properties because this is a field in the file. But there are fields here, there are properties in this file. Why is this empty? This is empty because in the file class field, so the properties of the project class is empty. Let's add a field or a property, which brings up the field modal. The field name is that key. So priority, done, number, date, tags, they are the keys to the property. Push plus, call it priority to match the priority field that already exists, or property that already exists. If you want the priority field to be in line using the double colons, you can make it code, italic, bold, strike through, etc. I keep them all in the front matter, so the properties at the top of the file, as you've seen over here. And now we can change the field type. So inside of the core Obsidian, there was only 4 or 5 types. Inside of Metadata Menu, you get far more options. So at the moment, priority is a list. It's a multi-list because you can add multiple options in there. But we want it to be a single list, so accept a single value from a list. And we want the source of those to be defined in the settings. So if I add a value, type first and type second to match what we currently have in the file, then save. You see, we now have that drop-down arrow just like we did with the class, but now it's with the priority because the project class, which is being found through the tag, is looking at this and saying this is a priority key, this is a priority key, these must be the same thing. If I click on this drop down, there's the setting of first and second. I push second and now it's added second into the priority field. Let's click on the pencil. So priority we want high, medium and low. Let's save that. Now when I click on the drop down, you can see it's still second because it's local, Obsidian's local, so everything's saved, nothing's automatically updated. But when I click on the drop down, now I have the automatically updated list to pick from. So let's just say medium. Now it's medium inside of the file. If I left click on this property, you can see I could change the property type, but I'm going to remove the done property. Now when I come in, I can add a field to the project type, say done. And then let's add a true or false. So that's a checkbox, true or false. We tick it. Now it's not inside of this file at the moment. If we click on add property, there is the done option there and I can search through all the different property types. Or I can click on the icon, insert missing fields in front matter, and it will insert all of the missing fields in this file class. In this case, it was just the done. There's Obsidian not having anything, so we've got the tick box of tick it on, tick it off. You could do it inside of the properties as well. This is where Metadata Menu and Obsidian Core are very similar because it's just a tick on, tick off. But if I was to remove the done property and remove the priorities property, Obsidian Core, I would need to manually add both of them, but with Metadata Menu, I can insert missing fields, and now they are both added. I click on priority, medium, and then I say it's done or not. Let's just remove those again because there is another way to do that. If we're inside of the file, we can click on the icon inside of the tab, inside of the File Explorer, or anywhere that icon appears next to the name of the file. It brings up the metadata menu modal, and we can see there are words here that says missing. That's because the property key is not in the file. It's not in this first file. I can manually add it individually, like you would do in Obsidian Core. You can add it as a list item, as a comment, or what I do inside of the front matter at the top. You can do that individually, and by clicking on one of these lines, it adds the property in line in one of these lines. This is the source mode front matter that I showed you earlier. Or you can come to the bottom and it says insert missing fields, and when you push this button, you can insert it in front matter or in line. So when I push this, it then adds all of those properties at the same time into the file. Exploring this a little bit more, if we look to the far right, we get the action button. So that's the done tick box, true or false, and you can see it's changing inside of the file. So these buttons match the buttons that appear inside of the file. Then we've got the drop down list of medium, and there's the answer here. So that's what's being shown. There's the key, there's the value, there's the action buttons. And you can also, from this option, go into the settings cog of that field. So the field name is done. You can't change the field type once you've made it. So you delete the field. So let's say delete done. Yes. Now it's gone from the FileClass field settings. Now I can plus, so I can add a new field to project. I'm going to use the same key value, so it's still going to be done, but instead of it being a Boolean tick box, we're just going to leave it at accept any value. So let's tick that on. And now you can see it's input. The action item is different because it's a tick box. Let's just add text in there. And so now I've changed the field type or the property type inside of the modal rather than inside of the settings, which is what I do. I use the setting cog and the plus button next to the class. But as you can see, Obsidian, the core Obsidian doesn't like this. It says, hey, there's a mismatch. This is meant to be a true or false, but there's text in this, which will give you the error. If we click on the error, Obsidian will try and rectify it. In some cases, it will be able to do this. So push save, and now it's changed all of those words to the checkbox. So it's got rid of the words that we added inside of the property, which obviously isn't ideal. So let's click on that option, add the text in because it's still saved inside of metadata menu, add that text back in, and now instead of asking Obsidian to change this for me, I know this is going to be text, so I'm going to change the property type to text. If we come in and add a date field, you can see we can accept a date. At the moment, metadata menu doesn't let you have times. It's on the roadmap, but you can only add a date in. So if we just tick this off, leaving everything else blank for the moment, the property inside of Obsidian has a time. It's got a date and a time. We have two different date icons. One is the Obsidian date picker, and the other one is the metadata menu date picker, which gives you other field options, which I'll go through later on. But when we click on this, and let's say we add the 1st of December and tick, you can see the time has been defaulted to 00s. So if you want to add time with metadata menu at the moment, you'd need to use the core date picker, which then lets you add whatever time you want into the property information. But unlike that text and Boolean conflict, Obsidian doesn't see this as a mismatch unless when you change the property types to date, because now it's going to get rid of the time. So if you want to use time, then have date and time as the property, and then it will save the time and actually show the time. It won't show the time though inside of the metadata menu plugin. If we quickly hop over to the table view, this is what I mean by it's going to show everything in that class. So the project class has been mapped to a tag. So the first file is inside of a project. You can see by the clipboard icon, which is why it's showing in this table view. Now, before I go and expand on all of this, I do want to go through all of the other things inside of metadata menu before we get into this. But of course, you can use the chapters and timestamps to skip things. So stepping back a little bit, if we have a look at the global settings, we have scope. And what this is looking for is it's looking for all of those fields, but where it's looking. It can look for the full note or front matter only, and this impacts the speed. I personally, because I keep them all inside of the front matter, only search for front matter. So the properties at the top of the file rather than the entire file, because if it's looking for everything in all of the files, it can be a little slower. And as I value my speed, I'm going to keep it at front matter only. There is then the field options in the context menu. The context menu being, if I right click, here is all of those field options. Open field modal, manage fields at cursor, etc., etc. Now I like to keep the context menu a little bit cleaner, so I'm going to turn this off. Now when I right click, you can see they're in the field options, and you can see open modal, etc, etc. And then inside of the global settings, we can ignore certain file types or folders. So if, for example, you don't want classes to be applied to a certain folder, you can add the folder in here. Certain extensions like the Excalidraw plugin extensions, you can exclude them from here because properties of the Excalidraw plugins don't really work with Obsidian properties because it's Excalidraw specific. Unless, of course, there's an update or something that I'm missing with Excalidraw. You can then exclude specific file patterns, which could be names or using something like regex to look for all files with a symbol or capital letters or just anything really. I don't use this because I want all of my files to be mapped. And then if there's a field, so if there's a property field you want ignored by metadata menu, maybe one of those date time fields, then you can add the field inside of here. The auto completion is automatically turned on, but you can turn it off. So I've removed priority from the properties at the top. If I add priority inside, so I've added in the 2 colons, it now gives me an autocomplete option of that drop-down list. Let's say medium. If I go to the global settings and turn that off, now when I remove medium and I push space, nothing happens. It doesn't give me a drop-down, I can't use the list, and because it's in line, there's no button either to bring up that menu. So I'd either need to click on the icon to show the drop-down menu, or type something out and hope that I got it right. So let's just type some random stuff in. If we come into the option, there's the random stuff. Obviously that's not one of the options, but because it's in line, there's no restriction. The same as inside the properties, there's no restriction, but you get the button to click and then add whatever you want. So if we click on the button, insert missing fields, it's not going to insert a missing field because priority is obviously there. If I get rid of the colon, now when I click on the button, insert missing fields, now we have priority because there's no 2 colons. I click on the option, let's say hi, and now we've got the hi in there. As someone using the front matter properties, it doesn't really matter what this is, but I keep the autocomplete on because it's the default setting. The field indexing status is basically a status very similar to Obsidian's sync to show you whether it's been indexed or not. The vault has been indexed or not, which shows down here. If I hover over this option, it says metadata menu field index complete. So if you've added changes, so let's change this to medium. It will do, yeah, it didn't even show the blip because it was so quick, but when you do multiple changes, adding various properties, or you first add metadata menu to a vault, this will be spinning because it's trying to index all of the information. If you want to show it, keep it on. If you don't, then turn it off. You can see it's now disappeared. I keep it on, but it doesn't really matter either way with the actual functioning of the plugin. Then we have a source mode preference. So when we have a list inside of a property, we can show it as an array or indented list. So when we had this list inside of the priority, we've got medium. Let's quickly add a status to show you what it was beforehand, because we had first, second. So I've entered in first and second as 2 items. The priority is currently medium. Let's actually go to the icon, go to the settings, delete it, yes. Now I'm going to add it back, priority, but this time as a multiple value from list, high, medium, low, because we're just keeping it simple, putting in the settings. Now when I click on the icon, I can add more than one. So we've got medium, that's ticked. Let's add high as well. So we've got both of those. Let's tick those on. If I go to the source mode, we have the list option, which is first and second. And then we have the array option, which is what metadata menu is currently set to. So it shows them inside of the brackets. And that's what this plugin does. At the moment, it's set to array, but you can turn it to indented list. So when you have a list of files that are, for example, a link or text or a drop-down, single select or multi-select, they will either appear in the array or as a list. I personally keep them as array because I use metadata menu to edit it all, but maybe you want to do a list for other technical reasons inside of Dataview, JavaScript queries, etc. But that goes beyond me and most people, I imagine, watching this. And then first day of the week is fairly self-explanatory. Do you want it to be Sunday or Monday, first day of the week, for the date field? So when I come into this date field, click on date picker, is it Monday here or is it Sunday? That's literally all it does. Closing down the global settings, we then have preset field settings. And you can see you can add a field setting, which is predefined and preset. So if we add new field, let's add in that done tick box. So it's accept true or false. Now when we go to the second file, there's no class on this. There's no tag in it and there's no class property in it. So when I right click, let's go to the field options, I can add a field at cursor or add a field at section, add missing fields in section. I don't want to add a class, but when I add a missing field, let's just add this to the front matter, you can see it's added in done because it's the preset field. So you can add fields to files that don't have a class type. I personally don't ever use this because all of my files have a class type, whether it's a project, a source, research, something, there's going to be fields that go with it. So I don't use preset fields, but you could imagine the preset field settings as a default class type. However, when we jump back into the file class settings, we come all the way down to add a file class after create, we turn this on. So if I delete this file and then I create a new file, you can see it brings up the pop-up menu for file classes. So it says, do you want to make this new file a class? In which case I do, so project. And now it's going to add the project class key and then the project value because that's the class type. I click on the drop down. Obviously we've only got the project class at the moment, but now when I push on the icon, insert missing fields, there's all the fields that's inside of the project settings. If I turn this option off and now add a new file, it's just going to create the new file, which then means I need to manually add the properties either through the core Obsidian properties or doing it through the presets. So adding field options, add fields at sector, insert missing in front matter. And because I don't have any preset fields, there's none in there, but that's when it would add them all. So I'm going to delete that file. This I'm also going to delete and then going to turn this setting back on. The file class select is that drop down that I showed you, which if we come back to the first class, if we get rid of that project tag and we remove that property, you can see the icons disappeared and these options, if we move forwards and backwards to update the file, the options from metadata menu have also gone. But I can right click, field options, add class to first, and then it gives me the option to add any class. Let's add the project. Now we have the class key, there's the project value, and now we have the drop downs of all of these fields. This drop down for the class being the file class select setting. So when you come to the icon, you can see there's the class as an option. If we turn this file class select off, now when you go into the setting, the class option has disappeared from this modal. That's the setting that you can either disable or enable because the drop-down will always be there as it is a property in the class file. I like to keep the file class select on just in case, for example, this project turns into a video project or an essay project, or maybe it's actually research, it's not a project, so I can quickly come in, change it to whatever class type need be, then I can add all of the properties that might be missing. The other settings we've gone through briefly, so you can select a folder for the classes to be in. I set it as class so I know what it is. There's the key alias, so I changed it to class, change it to what you want. There's the icon, package, there's the results per page, default 20, and then we have a global file class setting. So it will still look from the folder, so there's the class folder, there's the only option we have at the moment. But this global file class will override any of the preset file classes, so any of these preset fields will be overridden by the global file class, and this class will be added to every single file. So if we look in the sidebar at the moment, welcome is empty. If we turn this one on, now welcome has been given that global class. The global class being a project. So we have the class property. It says text, but it's already being added to this class field. And you can see here, this is where the Obsidian core plugin, second, first, second, these two as links, this is list, but metadata menu is looking for an array. So when we click on the option, let's say medium, and then tick is going to change the input to medium, and obviously all the other stuff has gone. If it does stay there, which may happen, it's something with Obsidian, so we may get something that looks like this. So the first and second were the list items, and then metadata menu turns it into an array. So we go to the source mode, it's turned it into an array, but it's just added our option on the end. Obviously not ideal, you can come in and exit, but most of the time you won't need to do this because obviously you'll be editing through metadata menu anyway, rather than changing properties from one type to another, just a nuanced piece of information you may want to know. But in this world, I don't want to have a global file class, so I'm going to exit out of that because I don't want it. And continuing down, we have the metadata menu button. And at the moment, the default button list is the clipboard list. And the button will be shown in the reading mode, live preview, tab header, backlink, search, file explorer, and properties. I keep these all on, but if you turn them off, for example, let's turn it off in live preview mode. Now, if we come into the file and we add a link, so let's say we link it to itself, it's linked to the first file. Now, the first file has an icon. We can click on the icon, but it's not showing in live preview because that's the mode we are in inside of this file. If, however, we go to reading, now we have the icon because that's what we have in the settings to show. So if there are views that you don't want the icon to appear in, maybe inside of the backlinks or the search where you're going through, you don't want to be able to click on them, then you can turn them off. I keep them all on because it's just easier. And for those very familiar with Dataview, you can actually add a class to a query. So if we say add new, you can add a Dataview.js query and add a query class inside of Obsidian. So we've got file class, project, so it's going to add the project file class to any result. So say, for example, I want all of the files in the project folder to be the project class. I can add in a query dv.pages, single quote, double quote, project, because that's the name of the folder I've just created, double quote, single quote, save. So now it's going to look for the folder, project, for the file inside of the folder, which is at the moment an untitled, completely blank file, and add that icon because it's inside the project folder. And you could add filters, so where clauses on here, you could look for tags, for file names, do whatever you want. I personally use a combination of quick add and templates to do all of this for me, which I've shared in previous videos, but this is another option to automatically add a class to specific files that you're finding through Dataview query searches. I'm going to delete this so it doesn't conflict with anything else that's going on. Now let's come back to our first file. We click on the icon, we click on project, it then brings us to the settings. Go to the FileClass field settings, there are lots of different options. And as a reminder, all of these fields, these property fields, are applied to the project class. So done, date, priority, applied to the project class, unless when you go to the FileClass settings, you add it to another class. So looking at the settings, we have the 40-page record, we have map with tag, which is what we did earlier. Whereas instead of having the key and the value of project, we had the tag inside of properties or tag inside of the file, but we can also tag names. So map with tag specific names. If I come into this file and add a video tag, so we now have a tag for video, and then we have the project class. If I come into here and add tag names plus, it gives me a drop-down list of all of the tags available. This is the tag I've just added, so it's the only tag in the vault at the moment. If I come into the file and remove this class, you can see the icon still stays there because the project class is mapped with tag and it's looking for any tag that is video. If I remove the tag, it removes the file icon because it's no longer inside of the project class. So you could have multiple tags mapped to a class type. So if I add hashtag article, now we have the tag article, and I add the article tag to the list, now the icon appears. If we go hashtag video, now we have the video and article both being mapped to the project class. Let's remove those now. What we could also do is map to file path, and when we push the plus, it gives us the options of the folder. So let's just delete these tags from the file for the moment. If we add a folder, say project, now we go to file paths, we push plus, the project folder's there, now we can add the project folder. This doesn't have a class because it's not in the project folder. You can see project folder is empty. If I drag it in, the first file is now inside of the project folder, so now it's been given the class and all the other information. If I push plus, you can then see I can add as many folders as I want, just the same as tag names. For bookmark groups, it's referring to the core plugin bookmark. So that is this icon up here. I'm just going to drag it down the bottom. You can see this file can be bookmarked. If I go to the top 3 buttons and then bookmark the file, there's a path name. I'm just going to leave the title the same, save. Now we have the first file bookmarked. It's kind of like a favorites option inside of Obsidian. And inside of this, we can add a bookmark group. So if I was to say active projects, we've got the first file. If I drag this into the active project bookmark group, then map the project class with the active project bookmark group, now we get the option. And if we remove the first page from bookmarks, I've clicked on the icon, I then go to remove. Now it also gets removed from the file class. So you could use the bookmarks panel as an active project, working project, to-do project, because if we add this bookmark back and then add it to the active project group, save, now we get the class. Let's say we add a working project bookmark group inside of the files and folders core plugin. You can't drag and drop files around because this is your folder system, just like files and folders on your computer, but the bookmarks, you can manually drag them around. So I can move first into the working project group. Now it's removed from the class. So we could have a working class and an active class, and dragging the files between the bookmark groups to change the property options. Then we have the parent file class. Now to use this, I need another file class. I'm going to go to the folder, I'm going to push the plus button, type video because a video type, and now I'm in the video file class settings. You can see video, there's the video icon, file class settings. And inside of these settings, I'm going to add a parent file class, giving me the drop-down list of all the classes inside of the class folder, and say project. So the video class is a child to the project class, and the project class is a parent to the video class. If we go to the fields of both of these, the project has 3 fields. It's got done, date, and priority, and the video has no fields at the moment. But when I add a field, so let's just add an active tick box to say we're actively working on the thing. This is a Boolean, it's a true or false. Now, when I click on this first file, I'm going to add a file class. If I add a project file class and click on the icon, we get the class dropdown, which now includes the video class, and the 3 properties inside of the project settings. However, if we change this to video, now it's adding in the video class setting. So down the bottom you see project, these 3 fields highlighted because it's in the project class. To video, that's the active field because the video is the child to the project class, which is why it's adding that field. You'll also notice the buttons down the bottom, that's the insert missing fields for the video class, because the field missing is specific to the video class. So I can push that button, and now it's added the active field into the first file. If I remove that and then remove the priority as well, go back into the icon, now those icons appear for both. I can add the missing fields for the project, or the missing fields for the video, or the missing fields for all of the class types inside of the file. Now at the moment with the parent file class there is only one option, so you can only pick one parent, but if we go and add another class, let's say a documentary video, then in the parent file class of documentary I add the video, then inside the file class fields, push plus, and let's add a field, say team. So this is a documentary video. Is this going to be single, so I make it, or multi, so other people help me make it? This is just an example, of course, and I push tick. Now I have the team select field inside of the documentary class. If I come into the first file at the moment, that's not there, but if I go into the class option, now select documentary, now we have the team option. I can add that into the file. So we have the team class, the video class, and the project class. So we have a project parent, video child, documentary grandchild. And of course, you can then continue onwards. For simplicity, I'm actually going to remove the grandchild class. And now inside of the video class, you can see we also have excluded fields, that excluded field option that was also in the general settings, but this one's specific to the video class. And when I push the plus button, it gives me the options of fields to exclude. And these are the 3 fields from the parent file class. So let's say I want to exclude the priority. Now when I come into the first file and change the class type to video, because documentary no longer exists, click on the icon. Now the priority field from projects isn't being shown because we've excluded it from the view. If we go into the file class fields, push plus, and let's add another priority field that says 1, 2, 3. So we have the same key value, priority, but we have a different set of options. We tick this on. Now priority is in the video class. I click on the icon, now adding in a video priority with different options. So 1, 2, 3, ticking that on. Now when I go to the first file, we have video priority instead. If we were to have priority the same key, it would still exclude it because it's going to exclude the key priority, but now we have the file class field video priority, and we don't need to see the project priority because we have a specific one for videos. However, for this use case, I'm going to keep it fairly simple, so I'm going to get rid of that option and I'm going to delete that field. I'm also going to take it out of the bookmarks and then also remove the groups. But I do want to customize the button option because I want to be able to tell the difference straight away what sort of class this file is. At the moment, it's a clipboard, which is the default icon in the settings. If we go to Project, FileClass Settings, I can change this to anything I want. I'm going to say Target, and that's going to show me the icon to the side. I can then save it, and that's going to update the icon for all of the classes that have the target and update all of the files that have the class as project. This has a class of video and it's taking the clipboard because that is the video icon. So even though it's got the properties from the project, the class is still video, which is why it's showing the clipboard. If I change this to project, now it's changed the icon, but it's also restricted what's been shown inside of the modal. So I'm going to change that back to video, go to video, and then I'm going to add an icon. So let's say video, and now it's going to give me a camera. I save it, and now it's changed the icon. I will leave this website linked in the description below, and you can search for any of the icons that you want. So video is there. If I hover over, file-video-2 will give me this one. So we're coming to the button icon, file-video-2. There's the icon, save, and now it's been changed, which will change the icon everywhere that you would see it. So looking specifically at the properties and just the fields that are available, we have the class, which is the drop-down option. We have the date. If we go into the settings, we can change the date format, something I personally wouldn't recommend because the majority of plugins use year, month, day, and that's also what's used for the Daily Notes plugin. But if you do want to change the date format, you can, it's an option. There is then the option to insert as link by default, so when you tick this on, when you create a date link, you can see it's purple because it's going to link to a file that has this as the title. So when I click it, you can see it's now created a file for that year, that month, and that day. I don't want this, so I'm going to delete it. But if you're using a daily journal with daily notes or something like that, that is how you can use the date field to link to the daily note. I'm going to turn this one off because to me that's not useful. If you want to change where it links to, you can customize the link path, maybe adding in different folders in there, or maybe changing the name, adding that into the setting. Then we also get the option to define a shift interval. So let's say 5 days and save the setting. When we click on this button, it's going to shift date added. So currently we're on the 1st. We push that button. Now it's the 6th because it's added 5 days. If we push it again, it's 11 because it's added 5 days. We click on the set date icon, we get the options to look at the date picker, to shift the 5 days that we have in the settings, click to create a link, clear the date. So at the moment we have a date in there. If we want to clear it, we can click on the eraser, push the tick, and you see now the date has gone. So let's just add another date in, let's say the 5th, move it, tick it on, so now it's on the 5th, we can click in there, move it forward, so now it's on the 10th, click it, and that's how you can add and navigate between dates. If we move this out and we say 1 month and tick it off, maybe this field is a review date field, so once you've reviewed it, you say, okay, I want to do it in a month's time, I want to do it in a month's time, etc., etc. So you can use the shift date interval to move your review date forwards, which, if it's linked, will then show inside of the file. So now if we take a look, we have the date linked inside of the file. Obsidian core properties aren't actually showing the link because it's in the date time format. If we change the property type to date, it's still going to show that date because that's core Obsidian. But if we have a look into the settings, go to the source mode, you can see it is actually a link to the date, despite Obsidian core showing the date and, if we want, date and time. And as you can see on the right side, the outgoing links is showing that link to the date, which currently hasn't been created yet. So if we go to that file, this being the pop-up that's being given because it doesn't have a class already. Now in the daily note, it's showing, hey, first, so if this was a weekly review, monthly review, or anything you want to do on a schedule, because the date is linked, it's linked to the first. If we go back to the first file and shift it forwards, you can see now the link has gone because the date link has gone to the next one being the 10th of the 4th. So that's how you could potentially use elements of spaced repetition or reviews or just moving things forwards. There's loads of options there, just showing you what's possible. But I don't want to have that link in there, so I'm going to erase it, and now we've got the date property, which is empty. At the moment, the done property is text. So if we go into the settings, accept any value is just a text field. It's a normal field. You can add template information in, but I would recommend using core plugin templates or Templater as a community plugin rather than Metadata Menu for this because it gets overly complicated. But I don't want the done field to be a text field, so I'm going to delete it. Yes, I want to delete it. Then I'm going to add it again inside of the project class. Done for the same key. Now I want it to be true or false. And so we have that setting done. I just need to say it's true or false. And Obsidian is giving me a type error because it's not a checkbox. So now it's a checkbox and we're all good. The priority at the moment is a multi-list, but we don't want it to be a multi-list. So I'm going to delete it. Yes, let's delete. Add project. Priority, accept any. We're going to have a single value from list. And like with the date property field, we then have these setting options. Previously, I've used values defined in these settings. So we add the value in. High, medium, and low. However, if we click on this drop-down, we can then select values from note. So let's select the welcome note and tick this off. If we click on the drop-down, at the moment, it's giving me all the values from the welcome note. So I'm going to delete everything from the welcome note and say high, medium, and low. Now when we click on file, we go into priorities, we get high, medium, and low as the options. If we add interesting into this list and we click on the option, go into property, now we have interesting in there. So you could store a drop-down list, a single drop-down list inside of a file. And the other option is to return values from a Dataview query. So you could use one of those queries that I used before from a folder or a file, or you could map it and filter it for certain files in a folder. But I want to keep this nice and simple, so we're going to say defined in the settings, high, medium, and low. Let's save. And now we have that single select option. Now to explore some of the other fields, let's add a field in video. We have the text, single select and multi-select, and then we have cycle through values from list, which is very similar to the other options where we can add a list of things. So let's say we have a starred list, 1, 2, 3, and we call this rating, and we tick this. Now we have a rating cycle field, add that, and remember this is the fields of first, not this file, the first file. This is the modal we have open at the moment. If I click on the action button, it goes through that list. So there's the 1 star, there's the 2 star, there's the 3 star, and go back to 1. When we come into the file, you can see there's the action button. When I push it, it goes to 2, goes to 3, then goes down to 1. And just like the select and multi-select option, you can choose the values from a note or values from a Dataview query as well. The accept true or false is the boolean. Then we have the number property. So if we have a rating of a number and push the tick, it's only going to accept numbers. So when we go into the rating and we push plus, if I say words and push tick, it says value must be numeric. So limiting it just like Obsidian Core. So let's say this was 3 and tick. Now we get the number 3. Here, again, Obsidian Core is giving us a mismatch. So let's see if it gives us the appropriate change. Yes, now it's a number property type inside of Obsidian Core and inside of Metadata Menu. Those of you that are vigilant can also see step is optional. So we can add a step like with the date. So let's say we're going to go up in 5s. We want the minimum value to be 0 and the maximum value to be 50. So let's say tick. Now when I push the plus button, it's going to go up in 5. So we've got 8 and that's going to go 33, 38. But now we're at 48. If I push the button, it won't go any further because the max value is 50. If I go down, it's going to take me all the way down. But when I click after 3, it doesn't let me go lower because the minimum value is 0. So Metadata Menu is giving you added functionality to the number field, which is core in Obsidian. Let's delete that and then add the rating back in. Then we have accept a link, which is very similar to a single value from list, but this is specifically a link. The reason the field is different is because you can add Dataview query optional lookups for the link, which can then be further refined with aliases to the files and sorting orders to the files. So let's tick this. Now the rating is a file link. If we click on the link option, it gives us all of the files inside of Obsidian. So the video is a class, the project is a class. First is obviously the file we're in, and then we have welcome. So let's add the welcome as a link. You can see there's the highlight, similar to the date, because that's a link to a file. If we click on the link, it will then take us to the file. So let's go and create a folder. So let's say you have your project. The first file is the project file, and welcome is research. And we want the rating field to be related research. So let's go to settings, rename the key to research, then go into the query, dv.pages, research, save. The field is now missing because we've changed the key. The rating key is still there, but the research key isn't. So we're going to add the field in, push the link. Now it's going to come up with welcome because it's only searching for files in the research folder. So click on welcome. Now we have that link. You'll notice that those properties that are inside of Obsidian, they're inside of core Obsidian, still inside the file, but Metadata Menu doesn't show the icon if it's not inside of the class the file is in, which is why rating doesn't have that link icon anymore. It's on research because that's what we renamed the field to be. However, that was only one link. Maybe there's multiple research files, so we can accept multiple links, and this does exactly the same thing, but when we click on the link, similar to the multi-select, select differences, this is a multi-select of links. So right click on the folder, new note. We now have a research file and a welcome file inside the research folder. We click on the first file icon, click on the link icon. Now I can select both. So both of these are ticked, tick it on. Now we have welcome and research both linked inside of the research field of the first file. So when I come in, you can see they're both linked. Now we have a lookup query, which requires Dataview.js queries because you need to query something in Obsidian for it to show whatever you've asked it to look up. Now at the moment, I'm looking for all of the research files, and it's just going to list all of the related links displayed in line. So let's tick it. There's welcome, there's research, because they're the two files we have. But now if we add a field search, so it's looking for a field project in those results. So it's looking for the results of this query, say research and welcome, then it's looking in those files for a field that says project. So inside the research file, we have a field project that links to the file first, which is where we have the lookup query. Inside welcome, if we add the property project, you can see there is no link inside of this file. So when we go to the first file, it's only showing research. We add a link to first, the icon now changes to orange. The reason the icon is orange is because there is a calculation that needs updating. It needs refreshing. So we click on the icon, you can see there is a refresh icon. Let's update. Now we have welcome and research because it's looking up all of the research files and all of those files that has a project that the project field is linked to first. So now inside of the first project, I can see what research file goes to, which functions just the same as backlinks. As this field type is doing calculations, you can make it auto update instead of having to manually update, so I'm going to turn that on. But where this field differs from typical backlinks, apart from the specified query, is we can change the type of output. So let's say built-in summarizing function. Now we get built-in summarizing functions to either sum, count, count all, average, max, or min. So I'm going to leave it at count for the moment. Let's go to the research file, add a field, add a number field, and let's add 15. So now we go to first, we click on the settings icon, we say summarized field name, number, because that's the field we want it to add, we want it to count, so we tick, there we go, we've got 1, because the research file has a number and it's counting that, yes, there is a number there. If we then go to welcome, we add number. At the moment, there is no number in there, so it's still going to say 1 inside of that lookup. But if we add a number, say 17, then we have a look at the first file, it will say 2. Now, I did just add the link to make sure the Dataview query actually picked up welcome, so it's still going to do this first check before it does the calculation. You see, name of project related to project, name of related field project. So if I remove this link, because the check for is this research file related to the first file, if that's false, then it doesn't matter if the number is there because obviously it's going to be false. So when the lookup refreshes, it's going to show 1 because there's no link there. So when we add the link back, then go back in, it's going to update itself and show 2. If I change the summarizing function to sum, now it's going to find those numbers, but instead of counting them, it's going to add them up. And so now we get 32. Something to be aware of though, I've turned off the auto update field because when you have auto update on, sometimes it can cache or save the calculation you've done, and then when you update the number, so let's say 23, we go into first, this may not update, and if it doesn't update, then you need to manually update it anyway. So I personally don't use the auto update field because it can forget to update things, and when you change the number, so let's take it back to 17, you can see it's going to show orange, so I need to refresh and update it anyway, so I know what needs to be updated and what doesn't. And so if the auto update doesn't update, I don't make those mistakes. That's me, that's my experience, just letting you know. That was the first calculation property. Formula is another one, but inside the formulas, it's using JavaScript formulas, which can get very complicated. In my recent shopping video, which I'll leave a link to in the top right, I have a JavaScript formula that the developer of the plugin helped me with, and that does essentially roll up information from Notion, but simply put, if I come into the properties and add a number, so we have the second number 5, let's just move that up so we can see it's easier. We've got the first number 10, so we've got 10 and 5. This is what Core Obsidian does to things that it can't work out what file type it is, it just shows you this. If you go to the source mode, that's what it looks like. Because it's a list view, but it's a little bit different because it's obviously calculated. This is what the lookup query was giving. If we go to video, use the research key again, just as an example for the formula. Now we go current, so it's looking for the current file we're on, so the first file, and then we want the key, so number. Now let's tick. It's now going to show us the number 10 because that's the current file, so the first file, and then the key number is 10. If we want to add it to second number, we go back into the settings, current second number, then refresh it. You can see we've got 15 because it's adding 10 and 5. Something to be aware of is the key. If you add a space in the key or a dash in the key and then try and calculate it, you can see it's actually going to give you no number because it can't find that field. And with the space, if you tick it on, you can see the icon is red because there is an error. There is an error in the formula field because it can't find anything. So we go to the settings. Let's remove that space. Now it's purple because it thinks it can find the property, but at the moment, NaN, because, well, the property doesn't exist because we added the space. So let's remove the space, go back, it needs to be updated. Let's update it. There we go, 15, 10 add 5 equals 15. Basic maths with Danny Hatcher. So let's recreate the field again. We've now done the formula. Like I say, have a look at the shopping list video for more advanced formulas. And now we're moving on to 3 different canvas related fields. So update links in canvas. You see, we actually need a path of a canvas. We don't have a canvas file at the moment. So when I tick this, it's going to say, you need a file. I'm going to delete. Okay. And now I'm going to go to the ribbon and create a new canvas. I've called it dashboard, so we have a dashboard canvas file. If we click on the icon from first, let's go to the video, use the research key so we don't add loads and loads and loads of properties, update with link. Now inside of the path, we can add the dashboard path, and this field type updates with links in Canvas. So I'm going to leave these custom settings out for the moment and just push the tick. And now we have the research key field and it says canvas. It's saying 15 because that's what's showing in the file at the moment. But if we add that file to the canvas and drag and drop it on, now we have the research file in the canvas. I've also opened it up in the right side pane. If we drag the first file onto the canvas as well and then open that up, that was control click, drag that down. You can see we've got research and first, and then inside of the first file properties, this is the canvas field that we're working with, the research canvas field. When I click on the icon, you can see it's now empty because the file, the first file, has been added to the canvas that we've specified inside of the field settings. Now when I click on this dot and drag it and create a link to the research file, it's going to, there we go, automatically create a link inside of the field to the file. So inside of the dashboard canvas, we have the first file. The first file has a field called research, and it's been linked, the first file has been linked in the canvas to the research file. which is why the research file is showing inside of the link. Wow, that was more complicated to explain than I thought. I've just renamed the research file to Learning Science, so we now have our project, our first project, related to Learning Science inside of the canvas, which is why it's showing inside of the research field. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. Now, if we go into this field option, we can be very specific with how the links work. So, edge matching colors. So let's say red, save, and now you can see the link has gone. But if we come into the canvas and we change the link color to red, now what's going to happen is it's going to create that link because it's a red link. It's looking for the edge to be red. We can also say, let's say from the top, and then say it's got to go into the side. So let's tick this off. Now Learning Science will disappear because it's coming out of the top, but it's going into the bottom. So it needs to go into the right side. So if we click on the icon, go back into the settings, you can see it's a red edge, it's a red line going out of the top of the first file, into the right of the research file. And we can also even be more specific and say, add a new matching label. So let's just say link and push the add button. Now it's matching the label link as well. So when the canvas updates itself, you can see the link will disappear. So now when I double click on the link, it gives me the option to add a label. Let's type link, it's hidden behind. So now we have the red link that's got the link label going out of the first file into the right of the research file, which is showing in here. So you can be very, very specific. And on top of that, you can add Dataview queries looking for files that have certain information. So let's use that research folder again. Let's remove these to make the query a little bit easier. So it's just looking for research files. Now at the moment, it's being linked. So let's just delete that. It's being linked, but let's remove the link. So it's disappeared. Now the Learning Science is inside of the research folder. So when we drag, the link should appear Learning Science. If we drag the welcome into the project folder, then we add the welcome file onto the canvas. In theory, if everything works appropriately, when I add the link, it's not going to appear in research because welcome is in the wrong folder because that's what the Dataview query is looking for. So even though everything is the same, the field is looking for where the file is put. So if we move the welcome file into the research folder, when the canvas updates, you can see welcome has been added to the field. And you can add to this by adding in colors. So let's say it's got to be orange. Let's tick that on. Now when this refreshes, the links disappear because neither of these files are orange. So if we turn this one orange, this is now a file inside of the research folder that is orange, so it's going to appear. So that was the update with links in Canvas, but you could also update with groups in Canvas. I'm going to use the same key again to prevent me having hundreds of properties. We're going to use the same canvas, so the dashboard canvas, but as this is group specific, we can only look at the group colors and group labels. So let's say red and tick. So if I right click in the canvas, create group, let's leave it blank and then say this is a red group. Drag this over, make it a little bit bigger. When I drag this first file into the group, it's going to add untitled group, because that's the name of the group, into the research file. If we go into the settings, you can see it's a red group, and it's not looking for any specific label. However, if we add a label, let's say active, and we tick that on, then we tick. Now the untitled group, when the canvas updates, is going to change. Let's just remove that link. Oh, you can see it's just gone there. Now it's going to look for the label active and red. So it's going to add active in because it's in this group. And then if we create another group, let's just remove that. That was control, click and drag. And let's say WIP as work in progress. If we drag this from that group to this group, now it's going to say, oops, it doesn't exist because WIP is the label it's looking for. Let's come back in the settings, remove that, and let's say orange or green. So now it's looking for red, orange and green, and it's going to show what group it's going to be in. So if I change the WIP to orange, for example, say WIP because this is an orange group. If I drag it to active, this is a red group, it's now going to say active. So that was the update with groups in Canvas, and then we can combine both of these to update with links to groups in Canvas, which basically gives you all of the settings from both of those previous fields. So we select the canvas, let's say dashboard. We're going to leave everything completely empty to keep everything simple. Save. Now, because we've got the first file inside of the work in progress group and it is linked, it's being shown inside of research. If we move it out of the group, now it's not hitting one of those things, it will disappear. Let's move it back to the group and it will reappear. If we delete this link, it's going to disappear because it's not linked. And then if we add the link to another group, it's also not going to appear because both the link and the group aren't the same. So if we take this one out and then drag it to the group, now we've got the file inside of the group and linked to the group. I personally haven't found a use for this one, but who knows, maybe you can think of one? So next up are two different types of fields inside of the property. So let's say YAML first and tick this. You can see this one has a warning to the right. It's locked just like all the other field types, but there's a warning because it's only available in front matter section. So the YAML object field type is only available at the top. It's not available inside of the actual file. So I can't go YAML : and then whatever information it is. It needs to be inside of the front matter up here at the top. And when we click on the action item, it then gives you the option to add in YAML information. This is much more of a developer codey thing because you can add essentially YAML text inside of a property, which is inside of a file. And this is very similar to the JSON object. So if we click on that and tick it on, now when you click on the action item, you can add JSON information. You can do stuff with this, but I personally haven't found a use for this. This is much more like a developer people. However, unlike the YAML or JSON objects, the accept objects, just plain objects, is where you can put a property inside of a property. So again, these are only inside of the front matter. You can only put it in front matter. It can't be inside of the file. But when I save this, now it's a red object and the action item is the default box icon. And when I click it, it goes into a new modal. So I can go back to the first class modal. This is all of the properties. When I click on the object, it then gives me an empty object. So now when I add a field, let's say lit review, and make it a tick box or a boolean, I then get the parent option and say research, because the research object can be used as a top level field. So lit review is a property that's going to go inside of the research property. I save, now I get the view, lit review, and when I come in, here is the property. I can add it to the file, and then when I tick it on, it goes true, and then when I tick it off, it goes false, and that is inside of this property. So if I want, for example, the date, I can go to the settings and delete the date field. So, okay, because it's been locked, this is one of the updates in Metadata Menu, it's been locked. If I add that date field back in and say accept date, yes, I want the link, I can now add it to the research object. So save it. Now we have lit review and date inside of the research field. So let's add that into the front matter, add a date, let's say it's the 5th, and then save. Now we have the 5th linked inside of the research object inside of the first file. Now, because this is not possible at all inside of Obsidian, the core Obsidian kind of gets confused and it's like, what are you doing? So let's have a look at the source mode at what's going on. What it's doing is saying research is a key, but it's listing essentially other properties because it's a property inside of a property. So there's the next key, there's the value, there's the next key, there's the value. You can see there is the old date key. So if I remove that date key, now we've got the new one inside of the research property. Now, why in the world would you want to do this? Well, if we come into the options, one, it reduces the amount of options here. So if you do need to categorize things, so for example, stage of research needs to do the lit review. Have I done it? Yes or no? Let's add a methods. Let's say research, then go to accept value, true or false, tick. Have I done the methods? Yes or no? So I can have the research tasks, sections, information inside of this object. Then I can have another object. So let's plus, say writing, then add this as an object, save. Now when I add a new field, drafted, let's say true or false. Let's give that to the writing object, save. Now I can insert missing fields in front matter, go into the writing object, make sure that one's been added as well, then I can tick it on, tick it off, which means you could do task specific or stage specific, priority specific information inside of the objects. What I tend to do is use these objects instead of using a child class in some cases. So where we had video as a child class to a project, instead of having a video class file, I could come into the settings, call this video, and then I can have the video properties inside of an object of the project class instead of the video class. It's an alternative option. Both work, but sometimes I mainly want a couple of properties in a file and I don't need an entire class for it. But I'm sure you can come up with your own ideas. So I'm going to delete that object, and I'm going to also delete this object, having deleted all the information from the first file, because now I want to show you the other type of object. So let's add in, let's say addresses, and this one is going to be a list of object fields. So not only do we get a property inside of a property, but we get repeatable version of that. I'm going to use addresses as an example, so I'm going to save. I have an addresses object list. I'm going to add a field and say postcode and add that to the addresses list. So when I add in the addresses option, it gives me an option to add an address. So I can add a new item, and now I have an object called addresses, and when I click into the icon, there is the postcode. So it's currently missing. If we add that in, let's say BB22, I mean that's not postcode, but it's something. If we come back, I can then add a new item. So we have addresses 0 and addresses 1. So now we have addresses 0 and addresses 1, and inside of addresses 0, we also get another postcode. So let's add that in, BB33, because yeah, why not? So now we have two addresses. Maybe that's a home address and a work address, both of them with the same property but different values. So we've got the same key, postcode, but different values, BB33, BB22. If we then add another field, so let's say, and then add that to addresses, and then we make that a single select, let's go add type, home, add value, work, and anything else, and then save. Now inside of both of these addresses, if we click on the object, we then get the type because it's been added to both of the objects. So let's say this one is a home address, go back and go into the object here. This one, type, this one is a work address. Now when we come back, we have the home and the work addresses all stored inside of the properties of the first file. And this is where we get to the point of finding out how you actually use all of this property information in a way that isn't just jumping through different options inside of this modal. I'm going to start with simple data view. So data view queries are done inside of a code block. So you create a code block, you type data view, and then you choose what type of query result you want. I'm going to say table, and that gives you a list of all of the files inside of the entire vault. So we've got project, video first, and then it doesn't show the dashboard because it's a canvas file type, not markdown file type. That's the main file type it doesn't show, I think, from core Obsidian. And then if you want to show any of these properties that we've just gone through, you then add the key of the property. So if I want to add done, I type done, and now it's going to show what it says. So false, because this is false, and these two don't have one of those answers. Now, because these two are class files, they're not going to have this property information. So what I'm going to do is filter where class. So I'm asking Dataview to look for files that has a class property. So this class here, if there is something there, then show the file. So it's going to get rid of project and video, because if I click into these files, class doesn't appear there, and class doesn't appear there, because these files are for the settings of classes, not actually used. If we create a new file, new note, there's the option to give us the class property. Let's say video. We now have an untitled video file, and when we come back to the query, it's going to show both of those. The untitled currently doesn't have anything in done, so when I click on the icon, go to the done, let's just add all of these properties. Go to done. Let's say it's true. Now the untitled is true. Now, if I want to show the addresses, I can add the addresses in, and now it's going to show all of that address information. Due to some real world issues, I stopped and I did a bit of a cleanup while I was sorting some stuff out. So I've removed things, but everything still works exactly the same. When I'm looking at the addresses, inside the Dataview query, we have addresses and it's showing everything. If I go bracket 0 bracket, then I come up to the top, it's now showing BB33 and this is the home. So looking at the modal, we have the addresses. If we click on the action item, that is the home. That's 0, that's the one first. But if we come back into the query, change this to 1, now it's looking for the first one. We can then type a dot and then the property we want, so type, and now it's showing the addresses 1 type. And that's how you can query any of the information inside of an object inside of Dataview. So I'm looking for addresses 1 and the type, which is work. And as you can see, it's showing work. However, that's Dataview. Metadata Menu has its own version of this. I'm going to come up and click on the icon. Yes, I changed the icon during the real world break that was actually like 3 hours long. And I can click on the class down the bottom either way to get to the settings. Now I'm going to close that file. Now we're at the table view. You can see here are all the properties. As we're in a beta build, the objects inside of this table view don't show yet, but that's currently being worked on. Everything else inside of this table view can recreate basic tables that you would do with Dataview far simpler in my opinion. And probably most noticeably, these are interactable. So when you click on something, it updates the file. So let's click on the icon. You can see done is false. If we add a property, let's say it's medium, then we click on medium, it gives us the drop down of high, medium, or low. Let's say the untitled is low, and again, we can change this inside of the table view. There is a visual change for it to update. It's the same with Dataview, except it's less visually obvious with Dataview. But you can easily hide columns, so I've hidden the done, now done's gone, let's show it, and it's appearing. I can move it to the right, move it to the right, move it to the left, move this one to the left. You can move anything around inside of the view, and let's say I'm happy with this view, I can then save it as a saved view. So let's just save it as all. Now when I click on the drop down, I have none, so that's just showing everything, and then we have the saved view of all. And the reason I have the saved view of all is because when you have templates, so I'm going to add a template folder and then add a new note and then add video template, and if you create a new video using quick add or using a template, this is a video class because you need the class to show all of the properties and for the class to be added to the new file. But what that means is inside of the none view, it's going to show the video template and any other template files that have that class, which isn't ideal. So what we can do is come in and add a filter. It can either be a basic filter, so type the words in, or a little bit more complex. So when we click on this button, I can add a custom filter. What I want to do is go return a value and then exclamation mark for not dot includes bracket single speech and then the word that I don't want it to include. So template single speech close bracket. So now it's going to return a list of all of the values that does not include the word template in the file name. So let's tick that, and now the template file, the video template file, has gone. It's been filtered out, and I can save that as the all view. That's what I do to remove the template files from everything that I'm seeing inside of the table view. At the moment we have priority and we've got medium and high, but I want there to be a sort order on that. So I can click the plus button to change that order or move it down. So medium to high and then up we've got high to medium. If we click on this button right here, we then see all three of those select options. And this is the custom order. In Dataview, you'd need to use a choice codey stuff or a default X codey thing. This is just up or down. So I want medium to be at the top, then high, then low. Save. Now medium's at the top. If I change this one to low, now we have medium, low. If I change this one to high, it's still medium and high because the custom sort order is done inside of the menu. And I can even hide the priority, so I can't see the priority. And let's say that this is going to be true. I want all of the true videos, and I can hide that as well. So the sorts and the filters still apply to the view even if you can't see the columns, just like they would in Dataview, which is really nice. And what you may have noticed when I clicked on that done filter is there are lots of options at the top, as well as the options inside of the field type. So true and false are specific to Boolean because it's a true or false. In priority, it says high, medium, and low because they are the options that it could be. Inside of the addresses, because there isn't anything in there because it's an object list, it's just these 4 default options. So going into the done filter and clearing the filter, I can see these 2 different files. If I create a new file, so new note, and let's go insert template, go to the templates core plugin, template folder, let's say templates. Now in the new file, if I put enter template, it says video template, that's the one we made. It's going to add the class automatically. Now when I come to the view, untitled 1 is also in this class, but priority, it doesn't have a priority field, and that's what I can filter for. If it's an empty field, show it. So if you're looking for all the files with an empty field, you can do that via a filter. If you're looking for all of the files that are not empty, then it will show you those, and that's another filter. The not found field, so when we tick on that, it's looking for priority not found. So when we go to the untitled 1, if we remove this field, now it's not being found, which would be shown in the modal as missing. So it's a missing field inside of the table view. It will show you not found, and it actually gives you the icons to then add that field. So I can add it inside of the file or inside of the front matter. So I click the icon and let's say medium. Now it's going to add medium inside, it's just done it there, inside of that file, and now it's not going to show in the filter. And then similar to the last one, you have the opposite, which is existing fields. So priority is existing in all of these 3. If I then say this doesn't exist, then it's going to disappear from the view. So let's reverse that and say not found fields. Now it's just going to show this one. I can make it appear, let's say high, and now we can say only show high, and now it's going to show just those 2 files. I personally don't want to be seeing that one, so I'm going to hide that. I then want to limit the results to 1. So now I've changed the results per page to 1. I've also added it in this setting. Just remember, max records per page. This is to save it. So if you close down the file and reopen, so if we close down the setting, go to video, now it's been saved. Whereas if I just left it at 1, it would then default back to whatever the setting was beforehand. Now I get the 2, and then 3, and then everything in between. Obviously, there aren't many examples here, but if you've got hundreds of files and you want to show 10, you can go between 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, etc. But I actually want to show all 10, so I'm going to change that to 10, save. Now I'm going to exit, video, go back to video, and now it's going to show the 10 results. But it's showing me this none view with the video template. I don't want that to be the default view. I want the all to be a default view. So I can push the star button and this selects the favorite view. And this is the view it will now default to. So let's get rid of the video, go back into the video, and you'll see it's now in the all view because that's a starred view for it to go with. And it looks like I didn't actually save the view without the addresses. So I'm going to hide the addresses, save, and it gives you the option to add a new view. So if you save it with a different name, it creates a new view. I just want to update this view. But if I push the save again and say all new and then save it, now I have all and all new as views. But obviously I don't want 2 of the same view, so I'm going to delete this one. And then we've got the none and the all. For those that have been following me for a while, I use these sorts of queries in a Canvas dashboard. So when I double click, I can create a file. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and I typically have a Dataview query in here. But with this table view, with custom sorts, custom filters, and all of these options to edit the properties, I can do that inside of the canvas by creating a code block, typing MDM, so Metadata Menu instead of Dataview, typing class, because that's the key that I'm looking for. So just for clarity, when I come into the settings, go to the FileClass Settings, we've got class here as the key. That's what it's looking for. So when I come back in, it's looking for class. Default, it's file class, so just be aware what your key is. Then I'm going to say video, and then when I exit, it's going to show me the video class table view. Now, this is the default view. I don't want the default view, I want my saved view. So I can come in, say view, colon, and then all. Now I have my table view inside of the canvas, which is editable. So I can tick this and it will change the information. The table view does a visual update. This will do a visual update as well, and it's updated the file property. You can see it's now true. And if I tick it off, it's now not true. If I change the high priority to low, the information will change, and then the sort order will change. Let's quickly create a view. Done, let's say false. So make sure only the things that are not done is there. So let's call the view to do, and then add another view that says true. Save the view, done. I can now come into the canvas. Let's just double that. Go in, change the view to do, and then change this view to done. Now I've got to do and done. Then if we go back to the all view, you'll notice, well, untitled 1 isn't showing. And if we have a look, it's not showing because done is empty, and I'm not looking for empty. That's where inside the video template you can see there's a line there that's basically saying that it's empty, and we need it to say not done. So when we add a new file, it says not done rather than empty, so it can be found. So let's just tick this on, and now it will show down there, and then we tick this off, and now it's going to show up here, which leaves us with 2 editable queries where we can click on the icon to add property information, alter property information, and when we edit anything inside of these views, so let's say this is done, it will update the view automatically and then change to show down the bottom. Very nice. That's all I got for now, and as you can see, it's pretty much dark. So it's been essentially a whole day of recording this video, and I'm sure there will be updates and more things to come out, so keep in mind there will be changes in the future, so either ask inside the comment section below or join the Discord where I can answer and troubleshoot with you if you do have any problems.